One of my favorite genres is action RPGs, and there are a surprising amount of games releasing within this genre this year that looks good. We have some big and small games to take a look at. I'm focusing on games releasing for PC, so games like Ghost of Yotei won't make this list. But I at least wanted to make a video taking a look at all the action RPGs releasing this year, or games at least scheduled for release 2025 that looks cool, interesting. So let's get started. First up is Showa American Story, which is a really interesting game. It's set in the United States, but Japan has bought out most of the country. And you kind of have this fusion between Japan and the United States. The game doesn't seem to take itself too serious, with a lot of quirky things happening in the game. A mysterious catastrophe has also happened, so it is kind of a post-apocalyptic game with zombies, monsters, crazy shit happening all over the place. And the game also describes itself like a love letter to the 80s pop culture and with kind of a B-movie taste to it. To me, it reminds me a lot of the newer Yakuza games, the more silly ones. But yeah, it looks really interesting to me. Release is planned for Q4 this year. Next up is Lost Soul Aside. And this game seems to borrow heavily from the Final Fantasy series, where the story kind of starts off small, you're trying to save your sister, but then it turns into saving the whole humanity from a mysterious dimensional invasion. And you're obviously going to a bunch of different locations. It looks really beautiful. The combat reminds me a bit of Stellar Blade, fast-paced, a lot of dodging. I hope it's challenging enough and interesting enough. But man, the locations looks amazing. I wonder how open this game will be, or if it's going to be quite narrow in its scope. But yeah, it looks really cool. This is published by PlayStation, so I think that should guarantee some level of polish to the overall experience for this game. Release is planned for 29th of August this year. Then we have The Midnight Walkers, a first-person PvPvE zombie extraction shooter. I'm always kind of fascinated by these PvPvE games. I do like the appeal of them, but I do think they almost always fall short of the counterparts of having just a PvP game or having like a co-op or a single-player experience. It feels like they have to compromise a bit, but it is a very interesting genre of games. And this one is bringing in zombies. It's kind of crazy how people never get tired of killing zombies. But I think this one looks pretty solid. It obviously has a big emphasis on loot, extracting the loot you're gaining, bosses, crafting, maintaining your hideout, and kind of setting up your team with your friends. The emphasis seems to be on melee weapons. There are ranged weapons as well. And I think the combat looks okay. Kind of hard to judge from a video, but I think the variety is here. So it could be a really cool experience. Release is planned for Q4 this year. Next up is Moonlighter 2, The Endless Vault. We're finally getting a follow-up to the first Moonlighter. I really love the first one, combining a roguelite dungeon crawler with a store. So by night you're basically looting dungeons, and then during the day you set it up in the shop and sell it to other people, other adventurers. And that's kind of how you make your money to then spend in town to enhance your character outside of loot you find. And this one looks definitely better than the first one in every aspect, I would say. The graphical choice is impeccable, it looks amazing. A lot of small animation details really bringing life into this game. It is Digital Sun developing this. They have made Cataclysmo recently. They also made the first one, obviously. And then the publisher is 11-Bit Studios, one of my favorite studios. I don't think they've ever really missed when it comes to publishing or developing. So yeah, high expectations for this one. No release date for it yet, but it's planned for this year. Next up is Stellar Blade, the PC release. The console release was a little over a year ago, but now finally PC players can play it too on 12th of June. I've played through the game. I really like the combat in this one. Fast-paced, high reactionary combat. It's really good. I would say enemy variety is lacking a bit, and then of course the story aspect of the game isn't the best. Like, it's there. But yeah, don't play this game for the story. It will definitely disappoint. But it is worth playing for the combat. What I will say is that I don't think the game is worth 70 bucks. You should catch this one on a sale. But if you're really craving one of these games, the bosses, the combat, the environmental gameplay is really good. And as I mentioned, release for this one is planned for 12th of June. Next up is DuneCrawl, which is a really cute little action-adventure RPG where you take control over giant walking creatures. The game seems to be structured like a co-op campaign surrounding these giant mechs and the world where they are in. And the game puts a lot of emphasis on combat, exploration, questing, and I must say I love the graphical choice for this game. It looks really good. And you can also pilot smaller creatures, not just the big ones. So there seems to be more to this game than you might think. No release date for this one yet, but planned release is for this year. Next up is Where Winds Meet, an open world action-adventure RPG set in ancient China during the 10th century. In this one you play a young swordsmaster that embark on a journey to uncover mysteries about his own identity. Don't really know how this game is gonna play out, but I think it looks great. I get some Ghost of Tsushima feelings from this game, with the grand landscape, the small little side events. The combat is definitely more flashy, more magical and spectacular, and the game overall seems to lean more into magical side and mystery side, more than grounded in reality. The game is, at its core, a narrative-driven single-player story, but the game has 4-player co-op available with seamless co-op, and you have group activities for you and your friends. There is PvP, and there will be duels in the game, like PvP duels, and that could fit really well within the scope of this game. So definitely interested to see how this one turns out. No release date yet, but planned for this year. Next up is Last Moon, an action RPG inspired by the old classics from the 90s, and yeah, you can really see the old like Secret of Mana vibes from this one. A bit more stylized, but I'm getting some Secret Densetsu 3 feelings from this one. The game, of course, has an epic story to it. Human greed triggered the destruction of the moon, corrupted creatures appears, and the world is falling into chaos, and you're now trying to stop this. It looks really smooth, solid. Yes, the combat is on a smaller scale than most games we have looked at, but it looks cozy. Love the animations and style of this one. And you can play this in co-op if you want to, and there are a ton of weapons, runes, summoning spells, skills to kind of craft the playstyle you want in this game. No release date for this one, but release is planned for this year. Then we have the Relic First Guardian, an action RPG set in a dark fantasy world where you try to gather the piece of the great relic to seal the void of darkness. The game has a semi-open world where you get to explore freely, but you have a story that you are following. And I think the combat looks okay. It gives me some Lords of the Fallen vibes, but the animations are definitely a bit rough around the edges, but it definitely looks okay. I'm kind of wondering how big this game will be, but they do show off a lot of different creatures and bosses, and you get to choose from 5 different types of weapons to kind of base your character around. But I would have liked to see them show off a bit more about the world and the structure of the game, but we don't have a release date for this one yet, so still might be ways off. It's still planned to release this year, but we'll see. I do think the combat looks fluid and you got a lot of movement options, which I like. And if they can iron out what looks like kind of rough animations, I think this could be really interesting to play. Next up is The Outer Worlds 2. And this is of course the follow-up to The Outer Worlds 1, the first-person sci-fi RPG from Obsidian Entertainment, brought up by Xbox Game Studios. I'm a big fan of games set in space, but the first one never really caught my eye. Like, it is this big grand RPG set in space. It more felt like a mishmash of different games. It looks a bit like Fallout and plays a bit like BioShock. It didn't really feel like the first one had its own identity, it just borrowed a lot of ideas. And yeah, it isn't crazy as they have developed Fallout games, but I do think the second one looks much more interesting. It has that same kind of vibe as the first one, but I think everything looks a bit more interesting, the weapons, the playstyle. But we'll see, this is definitely going to be a giant RPG set in space. There aren't that many of them, so I'm intrigued, I'm interested in this one for sure. And from what I understand from the first one, you have a lot of freedom in how you tackle things in the Outer Worlds. But yeah, no release date for this one yet, it's planned for release this year. Next up is Crystalfall, a new isometric hack-and-slash action RPG. This is definitely a tough space to get into, but also a very interesting space as you can do so much within it, and there are so many players that craves these kind of games. But it is a fine balance between making a game that is complex enough for variety, but approachable enough for new players to get into easily. The game has a steampunk aesthetic to it, set in a post-apocalyptic world with dungeons that are randomized upon each visit. You have what looks like a pretty interesting talent tree progression system. You have lootable skills with randomized skill trees. I wonder how interesting that will be, or if it will be kind of frustrating, but definitely an interesting approach. And then of course looting is a big part of the game. You will have seasonal content coming to the game. There is single player and co-op in this game, so it seems to be checking a lot of boxes for being an asymmetric action RPG. I do think the gameplay looks okay. It looks a bit rough around the edges. I hope they actually make some interesting classes, as it is a steampunk world, and that they're not just using some standard archetypes for this one. No release date for this one yet, but it's planned to release this year. Then we have Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodline 2. Kind of a mouthful, but I'm getting that game is kind of called Bloodlines 2. And this is the sequel to the first one released back in 2004. That is more than 20 years ago. Kind of insane. And this is an action RPG set in Seattle. It's set in the modern day Seattle, where a power vacuum has emerged, and it's kind of a three-front siege over who gets control over the city. And as you are a vampire, you have a lot of crazy abilities. I would assume the game is mostly taking place during the night, and I'm guessing this is kind of an open sandbox type game with a story, side quests and all that stuff. I hope they also include other types of creatures. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I played a good vampire game, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Yes, I need to see a lot more of the game, the structure and everything, but I think the first trailer looks good at least. Release is planned for October this year, no specific date yet. Next up is WUCHANG Fallen Feathers. A Souls-like action RPG set in the land of Shu during the late Ming Dynasty. Doesn't tell me much other than that this game is based in China, but I do think Chinese studios are very good at developing these types of games. And in this one, you're playing a skilled pirate warrior with, of course, amnesia, and you're kind of affected by some kind of feathering disease. And the world you're exploring seems to have gone to shit, with a lot of different monsters and creatures roaming around. I think the combat looks excellent. Fast-paced, good animations, with both parrying and dodging, a lot of crazy effects. Yeah, this one checks all the boxes. I love the combat in this one. Might feel different once I have it in my hands, but it looks really good in the trailers. And you'll have a rich storyline in the game with several endings. I wonder if they take a more Dark Souls Elden Ring approach, with the story kind of being more told through items in the world, or if it's more direct. The game also feels like it's more narrow in its scope, rather than going the Elden Ring route with having giant areas. But we'll see. Definitely interested in this one. Release is planned for 24th of July. Next up is Street of Rogue 2. And I've covered this one before, but it's been delayed since then. I think it was planned for October, but now it's open-ended. But this at least is a crazy kind of open-world RPG sandbox. The game is set in a randomly generated world where you can play by yourself or with friends, and you can do almost anything in this game. The game's overall goal is to overthrow the corrupt president, but how you get there is up to you. Do you want to be a soldier, cop, scientist, hacker, ninja? You just want to rain down destruction on everything and everyone, and it's all up to you. The world is also fully destructible, and the world size is more than 10,000 times the size of a level from the first game, which is kind of crazy. So despite being a top-down RPG, it's still a crazy immersive one where you basically get to do whatever you want. Next up is Crimson Desert, an open world action RPG set in what looks like a giant world. This is from Pearl Abyss, the studio behind the Black Desert Online, and you can definitely see the kind of similarities. This is, however, a complete single-player game. I think having a giant world can be a strength or a weakness, as you don't want to have too much open dead space in a game. You do want to find interesting stuff as you travel within the game. But then again, it seems like you can ride on dragons in this game, which is so cool, and will require kind of a large world to be an interesting sandbox to play within. But the game also seems to blend in some sci-fi with these crazy portals, these structures in the sky. Yeah, it seems like the game will start off pretty slow, pretty small, but then things starts to happen and it turns into this grand scale action adventure type story. I think the combat looks solid, definitely some crazy bosses and skills, but I'm mostly interested in seeing how the story plays out in this game, if it's interesting, and how they blend all the elements in the game's story together. But definitely worth checking out. I'm very excited for this one. I hope it lives up to my expectations. No exact date for this one yet. Release is planned for this year. Next up is Hell Is Us, which is taking an unusual approach to being an action RPG. You do play it in third person, and it's mainly a melee combat focused game, but the game won't have maps, no compass, and no quest markers. So you will have to remember things and keep track of where you are and where you've been and what people say. But as we live in a modern age with internet, there will surely be a bunch of guides, maps, and all that stuff on the internet very soon after this game release, if you want that. But it's kind of interesting to take this approach. I'm all for it if it's not too frustrating or annoying. Like what the developers might think is a good indication of where you should go might not be that for the players. But we'll see. I'm very intrigued by the design decision here. The design of the world, the enemies is very cool as well. And blending melee combat with like high sci-fi type of enemies is interesting. If I remember correctly, there is a reason for this, as the weapons the characters is using are the only ones to kind of injure the enemies. But it will be very interesting to see how the reception of this game will be. There is a demo out for the game. It released recently if you're interested in trying it out. Otherwise, full release is 4th of September this year. And then of course we have Borderlands 4. The fourth mainline game of the Borderlands series is here, or soon at least. I have played all of the other mainline titles. Love the first one. I think the second one is the best one. The third one was honestly a disappointment. It became just more of the same. It didn't innovate the series enough. The classes were kind of boring. The story was kind of boring. I do love that you went to a bunch of different locations, but I'm kind of scared for the fourth one. I think their improvement of the style is nice. I like that the game still has that cel-shaded feeling to it, but it's even more crisp. But I think most of all it will come down to the classes, how the looting feels. Like yes, you can have billions of weapons in a game, but are they distinct enough, interesting enough, or just more of the same, you know? But we'll see. And then you have the controversy about the price of the game. I don't think I will buy this day one. I do want to read a bunch of reviews and see how the reception is before I even approach this game. But it might be a game I pick up on a sale, as these games have been a ton of fun in the past. Those were the games I had for this list. It would be a shocker to me if all of these games released this year, but I do think every one of them is worth keeping an eye on. And please leave a comment if you found a few you liked or are interested in, or if I missed any games. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!